Hi, I'm Mary from Joyful and Mary Quilting, and today's quilting tip walks you through the process of spinning your seams at block intersections. We are always looking for ways to achieve flatter intersections in our blocks, and spinning the seams of those intersections helps us to achieve that goal. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to spin our 4-patch center or intersection, which is the easier one just to get you used to it. And then we're going to do a pinwheel, which is a little bit more complicated, a little bit more challenging, but really the same principle once we get it together. So I'm going to show you how to assemble both of those blocks. Then we'll spin the seams to achieve that flatness when it comes to our block. This is where the issue is. It's in the center part because we have so much bulk. What's happening is we are folding over fabric, and I'm going to show you the spun seams, which is, it looks like a little 4-patch here. It looks like a little pinwheel here. This is what happens when we actually do this technique. We want to press it in such a way that we are going to have that flat center. So let's do that first with the 4-patch. Once we've mastered that, we're going to move on to the pinwheel block. In order to create the 4-patch, the first thing we're going to do is lay out our 4 squares, contrasting fabrics so that our 4-patch shows up. And then we will sew together these two, and then we'll sew together these two using our 1/4-inch seam. So we have done that, and I'm counting, this is my dark fabric. I am going to press toward the dark. We will press at this point of the assembly. Now I'm going to show you, this isn't really the spinning seams part, but this is really, really important, I think, in order to get that spinning seams to work on your block. You need to have an accurate intersection right here. And the easiest way for me to do that is to diagonally pin. So I'm going to nest these seams together, which is easy to do because we have the seam pressed in this direction and in this direction. So when we fold them right sides together, the seams are going to nest nicely. Now you can feel it. You want to line up those raw edges, and you can feel that flatness right there. If you feel a bump, that means that you either have the seams on top of each other in this direction or in this direction. You don't want to feel that. It needs to feel flat. So we want to make sure that we have nested those seams together. You don't need to pin down into the intersection as long as you can feel the flatness. And then you're going to pin starting on one side of the seam, and you're going to come up on the other side. That's the diagonally pinning technique. Same thing on the other side. Now, you can get by with just doing one pin, but for something where I'm really focusing on that intersection, I like to pin twice. I never sew over my pins. I always remove those pins before I get to them. Now, as you can see, this wants to move this direction, and we don't want that to happen. So I'm going to pin the ends and pin in between. A double check on that is to make sure that these seams are also nested down here. You don't have to pin them, but when you make sure they're nested, everything seems to line up a little bit better. So I'm going to pin here. Then I'm going to pin between the two. I'm going to do the same. Now remember, just double check that nesting right there. It feels good. It's flat. So then these line up naturally on their own. And you get better at this. The more you do, the quicker it goes. I'm showing you slowly just so that you see what I'm doing. Now we're going to sew that 1/4-inch seam all the way along this edge, removing our pins as we get to them. But do not press when you're done. So go ahead and sew that seam. We have sewn a 1/4-inch seam along the edge, and if we peek and open it up, we want to make sure that the intersection is good, which it is. So we are all ready to spin our seams. We do not press this yet. The first thing we're going to do is we have to remove the stitches that extend out to the raw edge. Not the one that's sewn down, not this direction right here, where it goes from the seam that we just sewed out to the edge. So we're going to take our seam ripper. Sometimes you can gently pull them apart and the stitches will come out. I'm going to use a seam ripper and just pick those stitches out. So you can see that they are just right here on the end. There's no knots or anything in there, so I can just pull that out. And I want to pick it out all the way to the intersection. So I've done that on this side. Flip it over, And you're going to do the same thing on this side. I just want to make sure that you get those little stitches out there because that's what's going to allow you to spin your seam. You have to free that up. So I have picked out that little extra right there so that when I open this up, I'm going to be able to press in this direction and in this direction. So you can see now we're able to press. This is how we're going to press it. We have one side pressed up and one side pressed down. And you can see, look at that nice little four-patch that shows up right there in the center. Now you turn it over, it is laying flat. You can spray it with a little pressing solution if you want, but that is what a spun seam looks like on a four-patch. Now let's go ahead and do it with the pinwheel block. We're going to assemble the pinwheel block the same way we did the four-patch. We just are using half square triangles instead of plain squares. We want to right sides together, place these two together, and place these two together. It's important again that it's flat here, that we have nested our seams, but we want to make sure it's nested all the way down. You can have these flat and down at this end not flat without much trouble, and that will not be good because then your block is going to be crooked when you press it open. So you want to make sure that you have nested all the way down, you can feel it, then put your pins in. 2 pins will probably work on this. You want to make sure you have this one in here just so that you don't have that shifting on this end. Same thing with this one. Pin it here. It's easier if you just place and pin as you're going along so you don't get anything mixed up. I've got my 2 seams nested, I can feel it, and I'm going to put the pin in. Then I'm going to take and sew a 1/4 inch seam all the way down both of these edges, and I'm going to press toward that red fabric. So I have done that. I've pressed toward the red fabric. You can see everything's lined up nicely, and I'm ready to put these 2 halves together. When I do that, this is again a little more challenging because we have a lot more seams here, but this is why it's so important that we spin those seams when we're finished. So let's place these 2 right sides together, and the nesting again will occur right here in the center, and you can feel that flatness right there. Now this is where we do a little extra pinning. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my pin, and I like using those very sharp pins because they're small, and I want to make sure that I have pinned through that point and through that point. I don't want it over, I don't want it down too far, I want it right there in that point. So again, the more you do this, the easier it gets. But I'm going to take a look, put my pin in, and then make sure that it's in the right spot on here. It needs to go down just a little bit. So there, I've got it right in the right spot. The pin is then going to go right through that point on this piece. Leave it perpendicular for now. As you can see, it's up and down, and now we're going to diagonally pin again, and this is what's going to hold that in place. Then we'll remove that pin. So we're going to pin on one side of the seam and then back up on the other. Same thing on this side. We are going to pin on the one side of the seam and up, back up on the other, and then we can remove that pin. So this is anchored in place, but you can see this is not straight. We want to make sure that it is straight, and once again, that's where it's important down here that we nest those seams even though we're not going to sew them, because nesting them is going to make everything straight. So I can feel it, they're nice and flat. And then I'm going to place my pin here and then another pin halfway between. You don't have to put that in if you don't want to. It's totally up to you. Nesting on this side, make sure it's nice and flat. Put my pin in, then I'll place another pin halfway between, and this is my seam that I'm going to sew right here. If you have an accurate 1/4 inch marking on your sewing machine marked, you're going to sew right to that exact point and beyond.
Remove your pins before you get to them. Never, never, never sew over the pins. Damage your machine. They can break, they can fly out, they can hit you. All sorts of terrible things can happen. So we want to make sure that we sew that, taking those pins out as we go along. I use the dark thread so that you can see. I wouldn't do that normally. But here I have sewn. My 1/4 inch goes right through that point just like I want it to. So we're going to take a peek and make sure it looks good on this side before we do anything else. And look, they come together just nicely all the way to the point. So they are ready for us to be able to spin those seams. Just like in the other block that we did, the 4 patch, what you want to remove is the little bit of thread that extends out into the seam allowance. So we've got a little bit there. We've got a little bit across here. We just want those out of the way so that's all freed up. We're going to do the same thing on this side. We just want to get rid of those threads. And like I said, sometimes you can just pull them back and they'll come out. You don't even have to use your seam ripper if you don't want to. So there I have those all pulled out. I still haven't pressed. As I open it up, this is where one side is going to go one direction, doesn't matter which. The other side is going to go in the other direction. And as we do that, you can see that little pinwheel, it's hard to see because we have so many layers here, but that little pinwheel is showing up right there in the center. These will be pressed in these 2 directions. Put a little pressing spray if you want on that. And there we have that little center that's nicely pressed, and you can see everything meets together here. We have a spun seam, and it's just so much flatter than it would be if we would leave all that bulk going in one direction or the other. And there you have it. We have spun seams in a 4 patch and in a pinwheel block. If you like this video, be sure to click like, be sure to click subscribe. I am always trying to be joyful, but I will always be merry. Thank you so much for watching.